For Oasis Audio, I'm Wayne Shepherd, talking with my friend Dr. Gary Chapman, the author of the New York Times bestseller, The 5 Love Languages, and several other excellent books, which are also available as audiobooks. The book we're talking about today is The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, and it's co-authored by Dr. Chapman along with Dr. Paul White. Gary, I'm sorry we weren't able to reach both you and Dr. White at the same time, but I did talk to Paul White, your co-author, and he said only nice things about you, so the pressure's on for you to say nice things about him.
Well, you know, Wayne, through the years, I have wanted to write this book for a long time, and I probably have had 24 people come to me and say, you know, this applies in the workplace. Can I write a book with you? Can we work together? It just never felt right to me until I met Dr. White. But when he came and I understood his background, we spent some time together, I got his personality, I just sensed this is the person I can do this with, you know. He's a psychologist, he's a Wheaton College grad, so am I. So there was a little, camaraderie there. And he spent 20 years working in businesses and with businesses. And I just sensed, here's the guy that I can really work with on this. And I have not been disappointed. We had a great experience putting this book together, and I have really high hopes for the book. I think it's going to help a lot of people. Sometime
I would like to hear, privately if you like, the proposals you've turned down for the 5 love languages.
Well, I don't want to share those publicly because many of those people are sincere people, and they had used the 5 love languages in their own workplace and saw the potential of it, and I'm sure many of them would have been fine co-authors as well. But yeah. I just never had the right feeling about it.
I'm thinking the love languages for pet care and what do you
I've
think?
had that also.
There's nothing new under the sun, I guess. Well, let's talk about how these love languages, these 5 languages, have just made such a connection with people. How do you account for that, Gary?
You know, I think, Wayne, it's because the deep human need is to feel loved. I think it's our most fundamental emotional need. The significant people in your life, if you feel loved by those people, life looks pretty beautiful. And if you don't feel loved by the significant people in your life, then life is a struggle. And I think that's why the original book was so helpful to married couples, and then the book for children and teenagers, that is, parents of children and teenagers, was so helpful because it gave the insight that is needed in order to love people effectively, that is, to meet that deep emotional need. And so, you know, taking it to the workplace was a natural transition, I think. Because people, we don't normally think in terms of our coworkers loving us. The word appreciation, I think, fits much better. But it is meeting that deep need to feel that somebody cares about me and somebody appreciates what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. I asked Dr. White about this as well, but the application isn't quite as easy as it is in a relationship. It isn't as easy in the workplace because you can't be as open and vulnerable in the workplace, can you?
Well, I think that's partially true. Normally, we don't share as deeply in work relationships, with exceptions. Now, there are people who are deep, deep friends in the work relationship and share their innermost struggles with each other, sometimes even more than they do with their spouse at home, which, you know, can be good or can be bad depending on the nature of that relationship. But I do think that in the workplace, when we feel appreciated by those who are our supervisors or our coworkers, it does make the work relationship and the work climate a much more positive experience. And, you know, for years now, 2 or 3 years at least, I have asked people just informally, on a scale of 0 to 10, how appreciated do you feel by your supervisor? Usually there's a silence, and then they say, oh, and they'll give me either, you know, a rather high number or a rather low number, depending on the nature of that relationship. Mm-hmm. But it's surprising how many people really don't feel much appreciation coming from their supervisor. So I think this is speaking to a deep need in work relationships.
So you must be excited about this book getting out there then, and with the credentials of a Paul White added onto it, reaching into the marketplace.
Well, I am excited. As I said, for a long time, I have wanted to write this book because I know that it has application in the workplace. And so I am really excited about it. And, of course, Dr. White has done some pilot projects over the last 3 years, and the results have been really, really positive. And so I do think that this book is going to help a lot of people. And we designed the book so that it's not necessarily the supervisor, the manager, the CEO, or the president who has to initiate this in a workplace. It certainly can be done that way, but just one coworker may say to themselves, having read the book, we could make things a lot better around here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get my little group here to read this book or take this profile, and we're going to learn how to appreciate each other, and then maybe the rest of the group will catch on. So I think it can start anywhere in a company, and that's what excites me. The other thing that excites me is we wrote the book not only for business, but we also wrote it for nonprofits and for churches because they use many volunteers, and we know that volunteers who feel appreciated are going to give more, are going to stay longer with the task, and are going to do a better job.
Well, of course, you are the author of the 5 languages, but what did you learn working with Dr. White on putting this book together, Gary?
Well, one of the things that came out of this study was the fact that your own love language has some impact on how easy or difficult you find this to do. We talked about the blind spot. Your number 5, if number 1 is your primary love language, number 5 is the one that means least to you, that number 5 is a blind spot for you. And so if you have a fellow employee or someone who works for you, and your number 5 is their number 1, you're going to have to consciously work on learning how to speak that language, because by nature you're saying to yourself, how could that be important? Because it's not important to you. But we have to understand it is important to them. Therefore, I'm going to learn how to do this, and I'm going to express appreciation in a language that person will really feel.
Well, as I mentioned, I talked a short time ago with Dr. White, and our listeners are going to hear that conversation next. Gary, I guess you'll have to buy the audiobook to hear the whole thing, to see what he says about it.
I guess I will.
All right. But it's obvious your high regard for each other, even though you'd never worked together before, and we're all going to benefit from this collaboration. So we sure appreciate your time, Gary.
Well, thank you, Wayne. Good to chat with you.
All right. And earlier, I did talk with Dr. Paul White, the co-author of the 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. Well, Dr. White, I feel like I'm putting witnesses on the stand one at a time and holding the other in isolation, because you have no idea what Gary Chapman just said about you. And I guess it's only fair that he not know what you're about to say about him. But you've been friends for a while. How did you get connected?
Actually, we've known each other for about 5 years, and I knew of Dr. Chapman through the 5 love languages initially, and that was very impactful for my wife and I. It helped us significantly. And as I read it and applied it to our lives personally, I saw the application of it to business settings where I was working. And so I actually pursued Gary, emailed him and called him, and then we met here in Wichita, Kansas, where I live, when he came out for a conference, and spent some time together and talked about the project and how we might work together. And this sort of started slowly, actually on the assessment tool on what's now called the Motivating by Appreciation Inventory, and developed that. And then I started working with it and the related concepts with clients that I had across the country. And we sort of kept in touch and would dialogue and go back and forth, and then eventually wrote the book together and have been speaking together as well.
So you immediately saw the connection between the 5 love languages and applying those to the workplace. Now, tell me about your work and what you do as a psychologist in the workplace.
Right. I am a psychologist by training and started out working with families in various settings. But I grew up in a family-owned business, and so had that sort of personal experience of living through the life development of the business and business succession issues with my father retiring and my brothers taking over and then my father dying. And because of that personal experience, I had some friends who are business consultants that knew of my sort of expertise and through life experience of that. And given that family-owned businesses make up 85% of all of the companies in the United States, if you work with a business, you work with families. And so they asked me to start working with them to help them deal with the relational issues in business and families. And so I started doing that about 15 years ago, and then wound up moving into the area of business succession and even wealth transfer, because those are highly relational issues of needing to talk about and make decisions. And then from that, it sort of grew into more consulting on the relational side of how to make work relationships work for people, whether or not it's a family-owned business or a nonprofit organization or whatever kind of setting you're in.
Is there anyone else doing it quite the same way you are?
Oh, I think there are, but it is a unique niche. And, I did. This wasn't part of my career plan that I was sort of shooting for this.
You didn't go to school
to
train for this one, huh?
Right. But it's been a great pathway, and there aren't a lot, especially there are a lot of business consultants, but there aren't a lot of consultants that deal with solely the relational side and how that impacts business financially and managerially and so forth. So it is a unique place that I have.
I find this fascinating, and I find the marriage of the 5 love languages in the workplace to make amazing connections. And how do these languages in general apply to the workplace? What are some things that caught your eye that said, hey, wait a minute, this works not only in marriage, but where I work as well?
Well, one of the first points and lessons I learned, as we all have about the 5 languages, is that not everyone has the same preferred language. And that's true in the workplace as well as in personal relationships. One of the things that I saw repeatedly was that there, in family business settings, there were missing communication links going on repeatedly where, let's say, I interviewed the father and he's telling me, hey, my son's doing a great job. I think he's, just taken over and learning and growing. And then I interview the son, and he feels like he's just a failure and that the dad thinks he's not doing well at all. And I saw that they weren't communicating in a way that, hit the target and where they met in the middle. And that a lot of times it was because they were using different languages. Just like we talk about in personal relationships, in the workplace, some people are very verbal and give compliments or write emails and notes, and other people, that's not an important language to them, and they don't send those messages. And if you don't hear those, and that's an important language to you, you feel unappreciated for sure and not valued. And so we explored how the other languages fit and made sense and were impactful in the workplace. So spending time together with people that are important to you, getting help on projects to help you feel like that you're supported, tangible gifts, even physical touch. I mean, they all relate in different kinds of ways.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you apply the love languages or the 5 languages to relationships, it's a little easier, I think, because you can probe and ask questions and explore. But in the workplace, there's certain barriers that we don't cross. How do you determine each other's language of communication when you have those restrictions in place?
Yeah, that is so right on, because from early on we saw that you don't have the same freedom to communicate and ask questions in a workplace relationship with your colleagues or your supervisor or whatever. And so how do you get this information? And initially most of us sort of use our own language that we prefer and communicate that way, which is fine, but the problem is that doesn't hit the target for everybody. I mean, not everybody has the same language, obviously. So then we sort of looked at, okay, how else can you do it? Well, you can observe people and watch, but that's very complex. And if you have a lot of working relationships and also not many data points, not many places where you can observe, it's just really difficult. So that's where we saw the need to develop the Motivating by Appreciation inventory, and that really was the core piece that we spent most of our time on, because we knew we needed to get that piece right. We need to be able to identify people's primary language of appreciation, their secondary language, and even their lowest language, because that becomes a person's, and especially a manager's, blind spot. It's the language you don't think about much because it's not that important to you. But if you have members on your team that's an important language, you're at risk for really communicating appreciation to those people because you're not speaking that language just sort of automatically. And so as we went through the process, we found that not only do you need to identify the language, but within the language there are specific actions that are meaningful or less meaningful to people. So take quality time. Some people like to hang out together maybe at the beginning, end of the day, over lunchtime. other people want very focused attention from their colleagues or their supervisor. Give me 10 minutes, let me talk to you, listen to me, I'm good to go. And then other people, like to get together and watch sports or do something fun together. And we found that you not only have to get the language right, but also the action right. And even further, it differs on what people want from their supervisor and from their colleagues. So they may want to get together over the week and have a barbecue with their colleagues that they work with, but they're not going to invite their boss. And so the inventory developed over time that we address all of those issues so that we can get a very specific read on what's important to each person.
So we have to become keen observers. We have to gather data, so to speak, by observation, not necessarily direct questions?
Well, yeah, and I would say actually it's really tough to find out other people's languages and actions without the inventory, just being straightforward. That's why it's such a key piece of the whole process, because most of us don't have the time and energy to try to make those observations. And being honest, we usually misinterpret what we see, and so we can be led down, a straight path. So we feel like taking the inventory, and for the teams to do it, we've developed group profiles that the team members can use, as well as all different kinds of tools to help them apply those results that they find.
So part of your vision is this book can be used in a group setting, right? A group of employees can use this together and learn together from it.
Absolutely, and in fact, that's the model that we found works best, that we will go into an organization and have a team take the inventory together, read the book, and or go through the training processes that we've set up and work on this together. It's helpful in the one sense to know your own language and read the book, but it really is impactful when we work with other people in your organization. And let me just say that one of our core values is that we don't go into an organization and do this top-down in the sense that, okay, we're going to go to a regional bank and say we're going to sell this to the whole company, because that really undermines the authenticity and the genuineness of the appreciation being experienced. I mean, people have gone through, relational skills training, and it can, we hit skepticism, it's sort of like, the latest program for this year of what we're going to do to make this a wonderful place.
We've all been there, haven't we?
Yes, but what we found is we target teams and the team leader who really is interested in this and want to do this with their team. We train them, and we work with people with their attitudes of how excited or not excited they are. But as they work through it, as they experience the positive benefits of getting messages from their colleagues and their supervisor that really does communicate you are valued here. We appreciate who you are and what you do, and it's important that you're here. When people hear that over time, it makes a big difference. And then what happens is it sort of goes viral within an organization, that another team hears about it and they want to do it, and so we go that way.
We all know how tough these times are for any kind of business. I don't care if you're talking about a mom-and-pop operation or a large factory. These are difficult days. How does this book help at the bottom line, so to speak?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of different ways that it helps. And one is that from the get-go, we started with having the mindset that we wanted to make this affordable for a wide variety of types of organizations, not only for-profit businesses, but also not-for-profit organizations, social service agencies, churches, ministries, schools, medical clinics, and that's what we've done, because every kind of organization is hurting financially. Government agencies are having their funding cut. Businesses don't have much profit there. Nonprofits, their donations are down. And so it's an issue that faces virtually every organization. And so we wanted to make it low cost to be able to apply it. But the flip side of it is that we also know that using and applying these principles within your teams helps make your organization better functioning and your business more profitable. We have research that shows that accurately communicating appreciation and recognition to coworkers improves customer satisfaction. It reduces turnover, both for staff and volunteers. It improves the relationship between managers and the people they manage. It improves relationships between coworkers, reduces sort of the grumbling and criticism and, gossip kind of stuff that can go on. And in some cases, not all, but in some cases even directly improves productivity of workers. And so when those kinds of things happen, businesses do better, and they're not going to lay off people, and it doesn't cost much money. That's
encouraging. You must have stories of how this has been adopted, applied, and found to be successful in some businesses. Tell me a couple of those, would you please?
Sure. Yeah, a great story is with a manufacturing firm in the Midwest, and I cite that specifically because a lot of people think, this is sort of touchy-feely, and maybe for preschool teachers or
I think we're all thinking of The Office on television too.
But we have worked with more of the tough guy kinds of businesses, including manufacturing, and I had a situation where I had a business owner come to me and he said, "Paul, I'm concerned because we're tight financially. I've got a good team. They work hard, and I value them, and I don't want to lose them. But I don't have anything to pay them. Things are just close to the bone." And he said, "What can I do?" And so we talked about the process of finding out how each person feels appreciated and encouraged, and took one of their worst teams. In fact, he said, we did the leadership team first, and then he said, I want to do it with another set of supervisors. And then he said, we got this problem group over here. Can you work with them? And they were sort of the stepchild department of the firm, and they had 30% loss of their staff in that department in the last 3 months. And they were looking at losing more. And they said, we can't keep doing this. We got to find a way to stop the flow. And so we came in and talked about the project, or just the concept that people feel, valued in different ways. And these people were like nodding their heads off like little bobble things in the back of a car that they didn't feel appreciated. And so we had them take the inventory. They then got the results of everybody in their department and their supervisor, and we started working on just weekly applying these through reminder emails and so forth. And I came back a couple of other times. And for the 6 to 9 months after, both during and after we did the project, no one else left. The supervisor was just smiles from ear to ear about how well things were going. And not only that, the people in the department took it upon themselves to call a couple of the workers that had quit and said, hey, this place has changed. It's a good place to work. You need to come back. And 2 of the workers came back and actually rejoined the unit.
That's success, yeah.
That was pretty cool. I was excited.
Well, for simplicity, let's say there's 5 employees, and they all have 5 different primary languages.
Right.
Is there hope for that company?
Absolutely. That's a great setting, actually, because one of the things that we really focus on is we don't want to give people more stuff to do. Nobody needs more things to do. We're all, pretty overwhelmed and overloaded. And so we've worked hard at trying to help people understand how this can fit into your daily life routine. And it's not that difficult, but it needs to happen. You have to be intentional and regular about it. And so we give instruction and tools about what are specific ways that people like appreciation communicated through acts of service or tangible gifts. And not only that, what are the pitfalls that you can fall into by doing it wrong? Let me give you an example. People who have acts of service, they, as their language, they like to have help, but a key thing is they want help done the way they want it done. And so if you come in and start filing or, cleaning up and putting things where they don't want it, that's not helpful to them. And so lots of times, first of all, you have to ask whether they want help. Secondly, you want to know how they do it and want it done. And then third, you want to sort of communicate how much time you have to help, if it's limited, or that you're going to stick there through the project because it's not helpful if somebody takes off in the midstream and they didn't expect that. The fact that people have different languages within one group is not a problem. It can be a challenge for everybody in that area that's their lowest language. That's the growth area, and that we really have to help people really develop a plan, because if you don't develop a plan, it's not going to happen naturally.
As I hear you talk about this book, I'm sitting here thinking that this would be helpful to people who find themselves unemployed and asking themselves, where do I go next? What kind of job am I looking for? What is my primary language and secondary language, and where do I fit into the organizations that I'm considering taking employment in? That's got to be helpful.
Yeah, I think so, especially in the area of understanding the kind of appreciation that's communicated from a business. I think most organizations sort of have a corporate culture that they may lean towards, where it's highly verbal or highly service-oriented or rewards-oriented. And you're exactly right. For example, here's a good example of a problem area. There are some models out in the business world where they give awards and rewards, in that they recognize performance primarily of employees, and then have a big sort of ceremony in front of a lot of people and call them up and give them a certificate or whatever, maybe plus a check. The problem is there's a good number of people in the workforce that neither of those languages, words especially in front of a bunch of people, and or tangible gifts, fits the need. In fact, I had one teacher tell me, she said, you can give me an award in front of a group, but you're going to have to shoot me first to get me up there. So we have to realize that, putting people up in front of a big group often isn't what they want. That doesn't motivate them. It absolutely doesn't. I mean, it's a demotivator. They lose sleep over it. Yeah. So. Very interesting. Well, I'm excited about this book, 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, co-authored by Dr. Gary Chapman and Dr. Paul White, a psychologist whom we've been talking to about it. And, Paul, I really wish you guys well with this book. It's a great collaboration. Glad you and Gary connected on this. Thanks. We are excited about it. We really feel like there's a need in the workplace for people to feel valued and appreciated, and we can give people the solution in a very practical way to help meet that need. Do you have a website that's connected with the book? Absolutely. It's called appreciationatwork.com, and then the inventory is MBA, standing for Motivating by Appreciation, inventory.com, and then both Dr. Chapman and I have our own personal websites. Mine is drpaulwhite.com. His is drgarychapman.org. Very helpful information. Paul, thank you for your time. My pleasure. Thank you. 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, now available as an audiobook from Oasis Audio. And for Oasis, I'm Wayne Shepherd.